Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Overcoming Graduation with Brian Drury. On Overcoming Graduation, I like to share the stories of people who have overcome graduation in unique, exciting, daring, crazy, beautiful different ways to show all of you out there that you have a unique message and purpose in this world. And if you're willing to work for it and you're willing to think differently and just do things differently than the rest of the world, you can make amazing things happen. So today's story and today's guest goes by the name of Jason Goldberg. And Jason is an internationally renowned transformational speaker, a life architect, and in his 20s opened for the Tang clan when he was a rapper. So as you can see right now, he's achieved amazing levels of success, but back in his 20s, he achieved what many people would define as success. He had tons of money, was making six figures, he had all of the trappings of success, but also at this time, he had reached all of his highs simultaneously. So it wasn't just highest income. It was his highest weight at 332 pounds. It was his highest levels of depression, highest dosages of antidepressant medicines, and overall highest levels of stress. So today, Jason is going to share a story of how a rejected credit card transaction was the turning point that helped him change everything in his life, lose 132 pounds and keep the weight off, and then completely rework his relationship with himself and the world to go on to become a speaker, a coach, and a true leader. Jason has worked in multiple entrepreneurial endeavors, started multiple companies, one of which worked with NASA. He co-hosts the Not So Serious Life with Steve Chandler, and he also is the host of the Evercoach Master Circle. Now, in today's interview, Jason, which this is part one of two because we were hitting so many good things and I knew Jason had a cutoff time, so this was recorded several months ago, but we're going to do part two very, very soon. I just saw him over the weekend. So in today's interview, you're going to hear how Jason was able to lose 132 pounds and keep the weight off, how he transitioned from who can I blame to self-leadership, and how you can too. Why Jason does not live in a world of absolutes, but lives in a world of less effective and more effective. Jason will describe why we all wear masks and how to let go of your masks and step into your authentic self. He'll also explain the concept of fall in like and how you can use it to enjoy your job and your life more. He'll explain how a burn rate and a fume rate can eliminate a great deal of the fear and the perceived risk in striking out on your own. And he'll also explain his philosophy on being playfully serious and why he chooses to live his life that way. Now, Jason also was kind enough to offer a free giveaway to all the listeners of Overcoming Graduation, which you can find in the show notes, titled How to Share Your Message Even If You're Terrified. And then along with that, you'll find links to Jason's website, his Facebook page, and all of the subsequent links in the show notes. And in the background, you can hear Donna, who is a repeat character on the show. And Donna is the train who comes by with the train tracks that are right outside my apartment just about every episode. So you'll also hear her featured on the episode and how she became a part of the show. So thank you guys all for listening today. I'm very excited because I'm testing out my new microphone and my pop filter. So this is really cool. And I'm excited to introduce you all and present you to Jason Goldberg. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Overcoming Graduation with Brian Drury. Today, as always, I'm excited to have on my guest, but this guy is a new, wonderful friend in my life, and his name is Jason Goldberg. Now, Jason has a phenomenal story to share with you guys, and I think it is critical for anybody who's coming out of school and thinks taking a job or going after a major that's going to make you money is going to make you happy. Now, his story has so much more to offer and how he's grown and developed to be the host of the Master Circle on Evercoach.com. I was just looking at my Evernote icon. And then also is the owner and operator of Neometry.com. So, Jason, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Dude, my pleasure. I love what you're doing, and I love how you show up in the world. So this is a total pleasure and honor for me. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, dude. And it's funny because even in that moment where I messed up in the intro, I was like, oh, maybe we should re-record, maybe. But like we've talked so much about already in the short time we've known each other, this podcast and I think life in general, I'm working towards being more vulnerable and real. And I want my audience to see that it's not about being perfect. It's not about making everything happen exactly as you picture. It's about taking a shot and just rolling with the punches. So today, Jason, we'll be starting off with your story and when you were in college and about to strike out into the quote-unquote real world. So can you tell us about what you were studying and what were your feelings about the real world when you were about to graduate?
Yeah, so my story is a little interesting there because I was working full time from a really early age. I was working full time from really the time I was 17. I was doing, at my high school we had OJT, we had on the job training, which means if you applied and you were accepted in this part of the program in high school, if you had enough credits, then in your senior year, which in my senior year all I needed was the whatever the compulsory English class was and the compulsory math class, and everything else I had filled on my credits. So I was actually able to take off half the day every day from school and go to work. And so I was working full time from 17, and I continued that because I had gotten into IT at that age. I got into IT at 17. I was actually doing it much earlier than that. I came from a family of people who were kind of geeky, and so I was exposed to technology early on, and I was deploying network systems as a friend of the family at Unisys, a huge corporation in Tampa, Florida, when I was 13. So I was getting into this stuff really, really early.
Wow.
And so, so I was my first job officially in IT was at 17, and I worked full-time ever since then. So my college experience is probably going to speak to a different part of your audience because I was a part-time student going through my undergrad I think it took me 6 years to do my undergrad degree because I was working full-time and then going to school at night. And so even as I was in school and as I was studying, it was a business administration degree. It was MIS, which
Management Information Systems.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they don't even have that degree anymore at that school, which is funny. I went to University of Central Florida, which is the second biggest college in the country, and they got rid of MIS because they said it's not as relevant anymore. Now it's either IT or business. I know. I don't get it, but that's what I did back then, and so I was working full time in IT the whole time. So I didn't have this graduation and then going into the real world. But what I did have was, I'm growing in my career, and for some reason I thought getting the degree was going to change something about that if I had the degree, then it would be easier for me to move into a management position and to not be the technician in IT. And I think that there was a big part in that. That was helpful for me to move up through the ranks. But as you and I have discussed offline, my success in my career of IT, making six figures in my 20s and thinking that getting to that point, thinking that outcome of having a title, a flashy title, and making a bunch of money was going to make me happy was something that, just like you talk about it in your own story and what you share with all your listeners, that's the story we're told. You go to school and you get a good job and you make a bunch of money and now you're going to be happy. And so I'm here to say that I had the exact same experience, that I did all that and it didn't make me happy.
And Jason, what I think is really interesting about your story is that most people who are going through the typical, college graduation path, they believe that once they graduate, then they'll be good enough, right? Then once I have this piece of paper, then I'm worthy of being hired, or then I've proven myself. But what's interesting for your story is that you didn't have that same experience, but there was still a sense of, once I get this piece of paper, then things will get better, I'll be happier, I'll find greater success. But as we've discussed, you did find the success in what most people would define as success in terms of the status and the monetary achievements. But can you tell the listeners a bit about what life looked for you when you were in your early 20s making six figures?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I really call myself a successful victim at that point in my life because, a lot of people talk about, their version of rock bottom or the worst time in their life. And sometimes it can be really dire. They're homeless and they're on the street and they're digging through the garbage for food. And that's really, really challenging. And my rock bottom wasn't that. My rock bottom had to do with me making six figures and being in this job and having this title and doing this work, because at the same time, while I had all these external successes, the financial success, the status success, and the condo and the car and all these things, what was being sacrificed was an entirely different story. And what was being sacrificed was my own happiness and my own well-being, because I was 332 pounds. I was extremely anxious. extremely stressed, very often depressed. I was on antidepressants, like, horse tranquilizer dosage antidepressants, just to hopefully, numb as much as I could of all the anger and the unhappiness I was feeling, and at times even feeling suicidal. Like it was just so overwhelming to always feel that way, to just wake up feeling that way, be stressed all day, and then to go home and feel that way up until the time you went to bed. And I had glimpses of not feeling that way, but that was the exception, not the rule.
And Jason, so, when you say like feeling that way, and actually, dude, you asked for a train. You were saying you hoped a train would come by. A train is passing right now.
Donna,
Yes. So Donna showed up for you. I didn't want to pause you because we're in a serious part of the story, but since we had the pause there, Donna has showed up and she's saying hi. There she is. Hey, Donna. So for all the new listeners, Donna is the train that passes by every 2 hours by my apartment and is inevitably a part of the show. So she helps me promote whoever I'm working with. So if you want to learn more about Jason, he would love for you to connect with him on Facebook and he has a special link, so you can go to facebookjason.com to go directly to his Facebook page. You can also go to meometry.com to learn more about his business and what he's created, and then also more recently how he's gotten into the Master's Circle on Evercoach.com. So, cool. Thank you, Donna.
I feel like Donna is like, in that instance, I feel like she was like going, preach, Jason, preach. Like, I feel like she was really giving me some power there with my story.
Exactly. She was just, really saying, I hear you, man, and keep rolling. Yeah. So, and to keep rolling, so you said, I felt like this. What were, like, because you said there was the suicidal, there was the doubt, there was depression, but was there even more to the emotion? Was there kind of like an underlying statement that you were telling yourself?
Well, it just, there were so many things that were going on, and it was like, that's one of the reasons I think that I had gotten so big and gained so much weight, was because I was, using food to mask my unhappiness. And it was really funny. I actually remember, like, if I knew that I was going to have a really busy or stressful day at work, it was like I gave myself permission to have like an extra donut at Dunkin' Donuts, or to get the second bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit from McDonald's or whatever. Maybe I shouldn't be mentioning these names since they're not sponsoring you. But it's like I use a justification, but the kind of the mantra that I would carry throughout my life during that time period, and really for essentially the first 30 years of my life, which I'm 35 now, so up until 5 years ago, this was kind of my default way of living and being in my world, was that I would always ask, who can I blame? Because no matter what was going on, I mean, even the fact of, giving myself permission to go have the second bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit, that was because I was blaming the day that was coming ahead of me. Like, well, this day is going to be crazy. Like they're going to put so much crap on me. This is going to be so stressful. I deserve to do this thing, which is detrimental and horrible to my body. But it was because I was blaming something outside of me. So really, what ended up happening was me recognizing that the big thing that was missing in my life honestly had nothing to do with my job, and had nothing to do with money, and had nothing to do with any of these external things. It had to deal with the fact that I had yet to take personal responsibility for the world that I was creating.
That's amazing. And it's such an interesting thing, because I think one of the biggest things for people is just the awareness. And I think for you, I know from hearing your story in the past, that getting the awareness that you were creating this victim mentality, or finding people to blame in every situation where things didn't go exactly as you hoped. Once you create that awareness, then you can recognize, okay, this is the story that I'm living with, and this is the way I'm choosing to view a situation, and then you can start to modify and adjust. So for the listeners, can you tell them what was the tipping point for you that made you realize that you wanted things to change?
I feel like saying the tipping point is a fat joke, but I'm going to let it slide.
For the listeners, Jason is also very, very funny. So expect just little quips. And Jason, by the way, feel free, like free reign. I love for people to be entirely themselves. So don't censor or pull back. We can have all kinds of fun on this. That's what it's really about. So good.
Yeah, there's no chance you'd ever get me to pull back. So, but I appreciate that. So I. At the height of my weight, it was, the weight, even the weight isn't everything, but the weight was a wonderful indicator, a wonderful way to frame all the crap that was going on in my life. So it was very easy for me to equate that the highest of my life, the highest money, the highest status, the highest stress, the highest depression, the highest weight, it was all kind of in the same place, which is interesting. That it all, it's kind of that the way you do anything is the way you do everything, right? So I'm like, if I'm gonna gain weight, I'm really gonna gain weight. If I'm gonna make money, I'm really gonna make money. I just really went for it in all aspects. So for me, the kind of tipping point, as it were, was that there was one day when I was in this job. And again, this is, I had been with this company for the last corporate job I had before I became an entrepreneur. I was with them for 7 years, and I was the director of engineering and operations for this technology integration firm. And I was making, a bunch of money and had the status and everything. And one morning I was in my office and I went to go make a purchase on Amazon. Another brand name that I shouldn't be mentioning because I'm not sponsoring you. Maybe at some point, all these people will sponsor you. They'll hear these podcasts and be like, man, this guy brings on guests that really use our products, even though he's saying they ruin his life. They sponsored his show. Anyway, sorry. So sponsored by McDonald's. Okay. So
sponsored by McDonald's and Amazon.
yeah, exactly. So, all right, so I go online and I go to try to make this purchase on Amazon.com, and my card gets declined. And so it's my debit card. So I know there's money in the bank because I'm making good money. It's like the one thing I have going for me. And so I get all pissed off. And of course I get into who can I blame mode. Like, who the hell, like, why is this happening to me? Why is God not allowing me to buy, whatever toy I wanted to buy on Amazon? So I stomp out into the lobby of the office building so I can call the bank, and even at 300 pounds, everything is always stopping. Even if you tiptoe, you're stopping. So I'm stopping, like there's water glasses that are doing the Jurassic Park thing, and I get into the lobby and I get on the phone with Chase, right? God, another brand. I called my bank. We'll call them Base Bank. And so I get on the phone with them, and of course I'm like in super pissed off, angry mode, because that was the other thing. Like, I just had a hair trigger. I was always like the funny, fun-loving, guy, especially because it helped me to mask what was really going on, behind the scenes.
Right.
But when I got angry, dude, if I could have spilled water on my shirt, or I could have gotten into a horrible car accident, and my level of anger would be the same. Like, I just had no varying degrees. Everything was a level 10. And so of course this was a level 10. So I get on the phone with the bank, and I'm super pissed off. What the hell are you guys doing to me? Right. I'm going into who can I blame? What are you doing to me? Why is this happening? I know there's money in the bank. What the hell? What's going on? And they say, so sorry, Mr. Goldberg, for the inconvenience. They're running through the script. But it looks like there was some potentially fraudulent activity on your card. And so we went ahead and cut it off to protect your account. So now, where a rational person would say, oh my God, thank you so much, I'm so glad you caught that, I just go even deeper into who can I blame mode. Like, who the hell is the asshole that took my card and stole the number and da-da-da-da-da? Like, tell me this fraudulent activity you're seeing. I'm ready to kick somebody's ass. And so they're typing away, and they say, okay, well, Mr. Goldberg, it looks like there were 4 fast food transactions in one day across Central Florida. And so we figured somebody had stolen your card, and they were testing it at different places to see if it would still work, if it was still turned on.
Wow.
And so then, the phone basically goes silent because it wasn't fraudulent activity. It was me. I had eaten at 4 different fast food restaurants in one day with no regard for what that meant for my health, and no regard for, what it was doing to me mentally. And that was really the burning platform. In that moment, it was like I was on this platform that was completely engulfed in flames, and there was no one else for me to blame. I could either continue to stand on that platform and just burn to death, or I could jump. And that was the moment I realized I've got to do something. I've got to jump.
Wow, dude. I mean, even like, I've heard this story before, and it still strikes such a chord. And what I think is really universal about this message is that we are all, I would say, like, and I hate to use blanket terms, but all of us are using some kind of justification to stay in a negative reality or keep ourselves in our comfort zone, even if that comfort zone doesn't suit us or create the life that we want. So when for you it was the weight and the stress, for someone else it could be alcohol, for someone else it could be using sex to fill a void. There's a variety of ways that we try and just justify our behavior and stay in this painful reality rather than just take the step and, like you said, take the leap and say, who can I be if I'm willing to love myself and work for it? So, and before we get into how you began to turn things around, I also want to ask about relationships in your life, because this is something I actually haven't asked you about yet. So at that point in your life, what did the relationships look like when it came to both friendships and dating?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, and first of all, can I just take a step back for 1 second before I answer that? Okay, cool. So I love what you said about, everybody has their own version of 332 pounds, right? Everybody has their own thing that they use to mask or to numb or to justify or to cover up. And so I just want to go back to the simplicity in that all of those things have one thing in common in my mind, in my experience, is that it's a lack of personal responsibility. So that is if there's any one thing that gets driven home from this interview today, I really hope it is the power of what I call self-leadership, but what you could call ownership or self-responsibility or anything like that, where you really are taking personal responsibility for yourself. Because if you don't have that, everything else, even things that are healthy, they're just going to mask things. They're just going to be you spraying perfume in a room full of farts. Like it's just, it's not, it may cover it up for a little while, but it's not actually going to get rid of the problem. So personal responsibility is a huge, huge thing for me. And so there's a very famous psychologist who actually just passed away last year, but a guy named Nathaniel Branden. And he has one of my favorite quotes in the entire world. He says, "You can't leave a place you've never been." And that to me is such a beautiful metaphor for personal responsibility, because until you admit that you're not taking personal responsibility for the way your life is right now, until you go to that place where you can recognize and be truthful with yourself about that, there's no way to leave that place. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I would say for me it resonates deeply, because even so, I made the largest investment in my life in my coach and my mentor right now, who I'm working with. And, I said, I'm going to commit full out and I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to start owning it. And I did for about a month. And then the next 2 months, it slowly kept kind of petering off, where I was doing good with one aspect, but all the other aspects were like falling apart. And by the end of it, I was looking for someone to blame. I was looking for a reason. I was trying to say, well, I traveled, so that it was too hard. And it even got down to the point where I'm like, it was my coach's fault. I paid for this expensive coach. Who the hell did? And then I was like, let's step back for a second, Brian. I'm like, have you been doing what this amazing coach has been telling you to do? And I said, no. And I was like, and when you were doing what he was telling you to do, how were things going? I was like, I was kicking ass. I was producing, I was creating, I was feeling great. I was doing things faster than I ever have. So that whole concept of like really owning it and saying, this is mine and it's mine to own or mine to just let run wild. That's such a powerful concept, because like you said, everyone has their own version of 332 pounds. And what I think is what a lot of people do to justify it is they say, I'm not that bad, right? It's, oh, well, I only gained a little bit of weight, even though they know they're in a bad cycle. And, for me, there's times I've used alcohol or sex or other things in my life to justify, like, oh yeah, I'm happy because, I had sex last night. So everyone's happy when they have sex, or, yeah, I'm feeling good because I've had a couple beers, but I'm using that to mask something or push something away, of those feelings of inadequacy or doubt or fear or loneliness. So I love that concept, and I think it's so true for the listeners and me. Obviously I'm sharing from my perspective because it hits me deeply, but for you guys listeners, I just want you to know I'm still thinking about you.
And here's the thing too, is that this is another message. Do you? I know you wanted to go into the relationship thing. Do you mind if we stick here for a minute?
Go. Yeah, cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Because here's one of the other things that I get concerned about, because it's come up for me before, and so now I kind of feel compelled, and I feel like I'm doing a disservice if I don't say this other part. And I'll give talks and I'll talk about this stuff and talk about being a self-leader and how being a self-leader is this is not, none of the stuff I'm talking about, by the way, is a right or wrong or a smart or dumb. To me, I don't do absolutes like that. I live in a world of less effective and more effective. And so this way of being personally responsible and being a self-leader for me has just been more effective when I exercise it versus when I don't. And so the thing that I like to talk about, though, is that, when I do these talks and I talk about self-leadership and I talk about being an owner of your circumstances, inevitably I will get the question from somebody in the audience that says, well, how do you do that 100% of the time? How can you always be a self-leader? And when I hear that question, I know that I've done something wrong, because it means that I've given the impression that this is a pervasive, permanent thing, that once you decide you're going to be a self-leader, somebody who's personally responsible, that's the way you are forever.
Right.
And that's not the way it works, Donna. Because, did I hear her in the background?
Yeah, she's loving this message as well, so keep rolling.
Great. So it's really important to know that, because I talk a lot about reinventing yourself, right? And it's something my mentor wrote a book on called Reinventing Yourself, a fantastic book. The guy's named Steve Chandler, and it is my #1 favorite book of all time. And so, I talk about reinventing yourself. He did a weekend event recently in Arizona, and I went and spoke about reinventing yourself. And when we talk about reinventing ourselves, a lot of people think that my biggest reinventions are the ones where I lost 130 pounds and the ones where I left my corporate job and have started multiple companies. They think those are my big reinventions. And those are great. I don't want to discount those. But my real huge reinventions are the random Thursday where I don't want to get up and go to the gym, or the random Tuesday where I thought this one person was going to sign up as a client and they decided not to. And all these little things that are little nicks and cuts in your life that can add up to being, gushing wounds. The real power of being a self-leader is in moment-by-moment decision, saying, in this moment, I am either going to decide to be an owner or I'm not. And that's super empowering to me, because even if you choose in that moment, like, oh, you know what? I drank. I masked what I was feeling by having sex or by having too much to drink. You don't have to be a victim of that choice. You can then decide in the next moment, that moment's gone. I'm in a new moment. Now, given this current situation where I am in the world right now, what do I want to create? Where do I want to go from here? And so I feel like it's really important to say that, so that people don't get in this place where if there's a day or an hour or a particular situation where they don't exhibit personal responsibility, then they should now become a victim of their victimization and just give up. It doesn't work that way. It is a moment-by-moment decision, and we are humans. And the goal is to have the awareness, as you mentioned earlier, to practice choosing to be a self-leader as often as you can.
That's wonderful. Dude, I was just sitting here nodding my head, because that is one of my biggest struggles at, growing my business, in my fitness journey, and diet, is you get this, there's kind of this underlying fear that we all have when we take on a new challenge or a new journey. And I believe that fear is, when is it all going to fall apart? Because, I'm hitting it, I'm killing it. Like right now, I have had 3 days in a row with my coaching where I've hit every one of my daily commitments, which has never happened before. And so there's a part of you that can go, wow, this is phenomenal. This is great. Look at me. I am proud of myself. I'm showing love for myself, and I can keep going. And then there's that other part, that negative voice that comes up and says, well, you've never done it this long, and you're going to fall apart at some point. And then the underlying fear, the even deeper fear to that is, and if I fall apart, will everything fall apart? So if I miss one day in my workouts, I'm going to work out, trying to get 7 days a week, and you go for a month straight, 7 days a week, which you might even be burning yourself out by that. And then you miss one day, and instead of saying, great, you know what? All right, I had an awesome month. I missed the day. And to your point, I'm in this moment. That moment wasn't serving me. So let's turn it around this next moment and either do my workout or schedule it for the next day or whatever. We tend to be like, well, you fucked up. There it is. It's like your negative voice is just like, aha, so I knew it sooner or later. And we tend to listen to that voice versus the voice that's screaming from the background, but that we ignore so much, that's saying, dude, you have done so much. Look at all the great things you've accomplished.
Yep. The real powerful self-leader misses a workout and says, that's just a piece of information. It doesn't say anything about me. It doesn't say anything about what I'm capable of. It's not some kind of permanent, pervasive personality that I now have to live by the entire rest of my life. The real ownership, the real personal responsibility comes in saying that even when you don't fulfill something like that, it's just a historical piece of information. There's no emotion tied to it. People ask me all the time, they say, how did you lose 130 pounds? And I said, I didn't. I lost 1 pound 130 times.
I love that. It's funny because the same message is something my coach tells me. If I'm having a rough day and I reach out, I'm struggling. He'll say, focus on this moment. What can you do right now? and focus on this day. Stop thinking in these long terms, because we think, in the past and the future, and really all we've got is right now. So what can I do right now? And that is such a powerful concept. And I remember listening to videos and speeches where people would say that, and I'd be like, yeah, that sounds great to apply later. Yeah, I'm going to start living right now tomorrow. And, awesome. And then one day I was just like, Brian, just do it. Just do this stuff. And I was in a moment and I was like, oh, I got to fold the laundry. And so I got up and did it. And then I was like, I want to do a workout. So I got up and did it. And then all of a sudden a day was filled with so much more progress and success and achievement and joy too, when I would just be like, wow, it's really not hard. We just like to complicate it to make it seem like it's a lot more difficult than it is.
Totally.
So let's jump back to relationships, because I know we got a lot more of your story I want to hit. So at that point in your life, we're coming up on this profound realization that you're standing on this burning platform. What did the relationships, both friendships and dating, look like in your life at that point?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, dating was always really difficult for me. Growing up and being the really heavyset kid, being 250 pounds at 15 years of age, which, I'm sure at 15, kids are super compassionate and really, really loving and accepting.
Yeah, no clicks, no hormones. Yeah, everyone's just really balanced.
Yeah, they want to hug you and tell you they understand your struggle. Yeah, such kids. Maybe it was a special school I went to. So it was interesting for me, because growing up and this, what seemed like a really difficult time, or what felt difficult at the time, being young and growing up and not having any interest from girls or from women, ended up being a gift for me in the future. But back then I was like, the waist down, I was a Ken doll. Like there was no, they did not see me as being any kind of a sexual being whatsoever.
I was like, what do you mean? I didn't quite get it right. Well, I'm with you now.
So I was always the friend. I was always the one they would come to with their problems,
right?
And of course, want me to introduce them to my bad boy friends in high school and stuff. So I was a very late bloomer when it came to that kind of stuff, and I got really, really lucky. I started really dating more in my early 20s, and I got really, really lucky at 25 when I met my now wife Alicia. We've been together for almost 10 years, and I met her, and I just I got lucky, not just because she's wonderful, but because she saw me for who I was as a person, like the really underneath the fat, the exterior, the physical exterior, and also underneath the stress and the anxiety and things I was facing. She saw, the best in me and brought out a lot of the best in me. And so, I like to say she got on the ground floor of a good investment, because now I've appreciated quite a bit of value. But beyond that, she's really the first. I can look back now and say she's the first loving relationship that I've ever had.
Wow.
I can say that without question, and she's absolutely the most supportive person in my world. I call her my Shiro, like she's my female hero.
She hero? Love that. She's
Love my Shiro. So but even then, I'm also, the other reason I'm very lucky is that she stuck with me while I was being such an ass in the world and being so stressed and so anxious and so depressed and such a workaholic that, we'd be on the couch together at night watching TV, but really I'm on my laptop working and not paying attention to her. Right. And she could have not stuck around for that. And she did, because again, she saw something deeper. So that was kind of the romantic side was with her. And again, I'm just so blessed and grateful to have her in my life and have her as my support. And then as far as, friends and everything, see, Brian, here's the thing. At a very young age, I became so good at masking what was going on.
Yeah.
So if you talk to people from my high school or people from my early 20s or my mid 20s or my late 20s, before I started making these changes, and you said, so how was it being friends with Jason since he was so anxious and depressed and stressed all the time? They would say, wait, what? Jason Goldberg? No. He was the fun guy. He was the life of the party. He was the one that made everybody feel like really fun and happy. Right. What are you talking about? So I masked it well enough that they didn't know what was going on. And then, of course, it just made it even more difficult for me, because we're looking for validation, we're looking for love. And now, even though I'm getting the validation and the love, I'm getting it based on a mask.
Right. And then
you don't really accept the love in the way that you'd like to, because you're not sure if they love you or they love the mask you're putting on.
Right. And what I think is, it's amazing because what I love about people like you who are willing to share this stuff openly, I know there's a lot of listeners out there who are doing what you do, like you did at that point right now. I know I do that at this point. Like, there's masks that I wear and I'm really working to take them off. Some fall off, you start to make changes. Some just fall off, a breeze comes by. Other masks feel like they're glued onto your face, in terms of you've hidden behind that for so long. And like you said, using humor to mask pain, or using humor to mask dealing with the serious emotions, that's something I do. And when someone like you can share this openly, I think it's really liberating for people, because it lets them recognize they're not alone in this. In fact, we all do this. Mm-hmm. And there's also a choice to let go of that and to step into your reality, to speak genuinely. And it's okay to have bad days. It's okay to not always be the life of the party and the happy person. Sometimes, like, you need support as much as the people that you're supporting need it. So I think
Absolutely.
That's wonderful to share. And so, all right, so you have hit this breaking point, and you said, I've got to make a change. So what did the next phase look like? So both in terms of losing weight and in terms of career.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of it started with probably a lot of people who are listening to this podcast, and also yourself, with just kind of looking into personal growth and personal development and seeing what that meant, and starting to read things, and, a Tony Robbins book here, or a Think and Grow Rich book here, and, kind of just starting to get into that world and recognizing that, oh my God, like I actually have some control over aspects of my life that I thought were out of my control. So the biggest thing for me was I actually started getting into personal development. It's so funny, because this goes, I don't know that I've ever put this together until just now. You're such a masterful interviewer. You're pulling out insights for me that I never saw. But the reason I got into coaching to begin with was because when I was in the technology job, I had like 15 engineers that were reporting to me, super, super smart guys and gals. They were, a lot of them, making six figures as well, because they were just so skilled. And they were also feeling a lot of the same things I was feeling, as far as being overworked, overwhelmed, stressed, and morale was down, all these things. Mm-hmm. And so being such a people pleaser, and really caring so much about other people, even more than myself. And there's nothing wrong with caring about other people. I'm all about, and I think you know this about me, I'm all about being of service to the world. Right. But it's one of these things where the analogy that was given to me one time by a friend of mine who's a coach was this, the teacup and the saucer analogy.
Yes.
You fill up the teacup, and you have to keep your teacup filled up, and then anything that overflows onto the saucer is what you can give to other people. And that was something I didn't do. I was giving my entire teacup to everybody else and not keeping anything for myself, and so I was being depleted. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so to go back to this, the reason I even got into personal development was because I wanted to do something to help the people that were reporting to me. I wasn't even thinking about the fact that my life was shit. Mm-hmm. I was just trying to help other people. So as I'm going in and reading about this stuff, that's when I really started getting into it, and I started looking into coaching for my people, and I started coaching them, and just so many things turned around in the business, both morale-wise and productivity-wise, and it was just a beautiful experience. So I was digging deeper and deeper into personal development, and really loving what I was reading, and the new awareness that I was finding. And then as far as the weight loss is concerned, my wife and I both started looking into bariatric surgery, to weight loss surgery. Mm-hmm. And so it was about a year of, tests. And I mean, you have to go through just all kinds of physical, psychological, like all these different evaluations, and just a lot of stuff that we had to go through. And finally we decided that's what we were going to do. And so I had bariatric surgery, about 4.5 years ago, a little over 4 years ago. And it was a great kickoff, right? So I was able to lose, I'd say 50 pounds or so fairly quickly, within a few months, from having that surgery. But then, if you're not taking the steps along with that weight loss to really change your relationship with food, and to, change your relationship with movement, and getting out and being healthy in a lot of different ways, from the inside out, it doesn't hold. And there were people that I had the surgery with, along the same couple days, and we would all go back together for our checkups, and they were not experiencing the same success I was with weight loss, because they had changed something on the outside, or I mean the inside physically, having surgery. They had a circumstance that was kind of put upon them and thought that, again, they would not need to take any personal responsibility.
Right.
And so in order for me to really have the weight loss and the success that I had, I needed to take that personal responsibility. So I started eating healthier, actually became a vegetarian, working out, did my first half marathon, like really got into just a healthy way of living in general. And that, changing my relationship with food and changing my relationship with the way I lived my life was a huge part of everything else falling into place.
That's wonderful, man. And so there's a couple things I want to hit on. So one, what I think is interesting in terms of how you said your life at the office changed when you got into the personal development books and actually applying these lessons in your life. And what I think is really critical for anyone listening who is a leader or who is working for a leader, it goes both ways. So from Jason's perspective, I believe that many of the people working under him try to mirror his behavior because, you're trying to emulate the person that you're essentially working to become in one way or another, or that you're working to provide for and give a good result for. So if you see a boss that's stressed and is constantly working and working late hours, it's very easy to fall into that rhythm because you're saying, well, that's what that person wants, or that's how they communicate, or that's how they operate. So for the leaders, keep in mind that the way that you operate, what you do is so much more important than what you say. Mm-hmm. And so the way that you react and the way that you respond is critical in how you build a team and how you develop the people working for you. For the employees or the people working for someone, keep in mind, unfortunately, many people will have a boss who doesn't treat them well or tries to overwork them, or any of those situations. You do not need to be affected by that in the way that many of us handle it. I remember in my first job, there were times I would look at my manager and be like, he or she is doing this to me and making me feel this. And then when I got into personal development, I realized I could own it. And then I could also communicate more effectively to build a strong relationship so that those negative, a person yelling or a person saying they're stressed, it doesn't happen because you know how to speak to them. So that was one key piece that I wanted to hit on from that portion of the story.
Love that.
And also from the weight loss. So I know it's so ingrained in us to look for excuses and reasons that when you said, oh, well, I had surgery, somebody goes, there you go. There it is. That's how he lost the weight. And actually, okay, what is your current weight?
So my current weight now, I had pizza yesterday. I'm not going to lie.
I get off the show.
This is horrible. I am supposed to just eat green, quinoa and acai syringes subcutaneously into my stomach for the rest of my life.
If you have so much as one bite of pizza, you've just described. All right. Anyway, actual weight.
Yeah, I'm at 215 right now.
215.
For my highest weight, which was 330, between 332 and 335, depending on which scale. I usually say 332. So I typically am around 120 to 130 pound weight loss, obviously depending on muscle and anything else that's going on. So 215 right now.
Well, let me just give you some of these first, because that's phenomenal.
Baby. Yeah, where's Donna when you need her?
That is awesome. And so for the listeners, the key piece, and I just want to re-emphasize it. I know Jason said it, but so often, and we're kind of trained, it's ingrained in our society to look for an immediate quick fix. We're used to such instant gratification. You can look up anything on your phone. You can get anything. You can be working on your dating, I'm doing air quotes, by just swiping left and right on Tinder. You can be doing things so instantaneously that we believe that that's supposed to be a part of every aspect of our life. So, although, like Jason said, he used this surgery as a kickoff. He didn't say as a solution. So keep that in mind, that although there may be situations where you want to use something to get started, it's going to take real habit change and real commitment. Not half-assed, not partial like I was doing in the first couple months of my coaching. It's going to take real commitment to see true lasting change and to really reveal your potential to yourself. All right,
Yeah,
so
absolutely, and I'll just
yes,
say,
please.
I was lucky too, because the place that I had my surgery, the hospital that I had my surgery, is a center of excellence. It's a Celebration Hospital in Orlando, Florida, and so they tell us very early on. They tell us in the information sessions where what a lot of places would say, this is the panacea. This is going to change everything and make everything easier. They said, listen, guys, you can have this surgery and still gain all of the weight back and then some.
Wow.
Like they let us know very clearly up front, and that happens a lot, that people gain, because the stomach is a muscle that stretches, and so you can stretch it out to its original size and gain all the way back. So when I first had the surgery, I was very hesitant to talk about it because of the exact thing you talk about. I didn't want people judging me or saying, oh, he took the easy way out, or that he had some magic bullet. And my wife would even get into it. Alicia would get into it, where if once I started getting more comfortable, and I would tell people, oh yeah, I had this surgery, and she would break it and say, but you don't understand, like, he works out 5 times a week, and he eats this way, and he does this, and he does that, and we finally got to a place where we stopped defending it, because I don't want to spend my precious time and energy managing other people's perceptions. The fact is that I made a decision and chose to do something that I knew was going to benefit me, and then had the commitment after that to really make it successful going forward. And so no matter what resource or what method you choose, the underlying, just like you were saying just now, Brian, the underlying need for commitment to that decision is really what makes the difference.
And I got to pause for a second, because what you just said in that there was one piece in particular that just is so profound. And I mean, I love the whole message, but one really resonated with me that I want to reiterate to the audience, guys. So he said, I don't want to spend my precious time and energy managing other people's perceptions. That is massive. If you realize how much we all do this every single day, that we waste so much time trying to get people to believe or think or see what we see in our reality, when in reality we could just be experiencing, enjoying, and sharing it, and allowing them to come to whatever conclusion that they want, not attaching our happiness to someone else's response to the events that we see transpiring. Because guys, we see everything in our lives through a different lens. Keep that in mind. So that, dude, that is huge. I love that. All right.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
So now let's continue into the entrepreneurial sector. So you were working in this job, you had started to turn things around, your weight had started to turn around. What was the trigger that said to you, I want to move out into my own business?
Yeah, so I had always had this entrepreneurial streak in me. When I was 14 and I had gotten my first computer, a lot of people weren't into doing desktop publishing, and it wasn't easy to make flyers and stuff as it is now. And so I was making flyers for people for, their garage sales or whatever was going on, and charging them to make these flyers for them. So I was really into, entrepreneurial things from an early age. So when I was in this job, and I was also at that time, I had started doing my MBA, and I was in an executive MBA program. So I was doing that, 12 hours every Saturday for 16 months. It was a very intense program, but it was a great learning experience. And I decided that I had a couple of people that I was in class with that, we decided we were going to start a business, and had a great idea for this executive transportation company. So we worked on it for about 9 months while I was still in my job full time. So now I'm full time in my job, kind of almost full-time building this business, and also doing my graduate degree. So there was a lot going on at one time. And finally, after really saving up money big time, where my wife and I pretended that I no longer had a salary. So we cut all of our expenses down as low as we can so that we could live off her salary, which her salary was a third of what I made. So we really had to chunk it down.
That's a really interesting technique, though, is creating the situation that you're preparing for. So it's like, so you're saying, like, your current business that you're building isn't making any revenue yet, so let's treat it as if that was my sole source of income, and build that up so that we can live comfortably, like cutting back your expenses to prepare for that. I think that's really cool. So, all right, please continue.
And it's really important. I mean, and I'm happy you picked up on that. It's really important that anybody who does want to become an entrepreneur is that, I'm not the guy that glamorizes entrepreneurship. I'm not the guy that says go max out your credit cards and take out a second mortgage on your home if you have a home, and do all these crazy things. There's a much more pragmatic way to do it, and it doesn't make you any less of an entrepreneur. It doesn't make you more of an entrepreneur, it doesn't give you a badge of honor that you struggle more to build your business. That to me, that's just that's a very egotistical way to approach it. If you can make it less difficult, if you can have less pressure and have it be less challenging so you can focus on the work you actually want to do, I don't see any problem with that. I think it's a more effective way to do it. So getting a real handle on your finances, knowing what your burn rate is for the month, knowing how much money you spend on a monthly basis personally, and how much, if you need to spend any money in your business, even if it's a very basic Excel spreadsheet. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, or use Mint, or use I Need a Budget, or You Need a Budget, I think it's called, or whatever you want to use. Get a handle on your finances and save, and cut your expenses so that when you do transition, or when you're in the process of transitioning, you don't have this extra unneeded pressure to make money instantly. Because that is, if you go out into the world as an entrepreneur, and I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and people that I call futurepreneurs that want to transition from being in a corporate job to being an entrepreneur, and I think it's so important that there is a level of patience involved with that. Mm-hmm. And if you go into any venture and say, I have to make this work now or I'm screwed, then you're screwed.
It's interesting because my dad has been pushing me to not focus on monetization, because there is this kind of push like, well, I'm an entrepreneur now, I have my own business, I should be making money, and almost this kind of fear like, if I'm not making money, it's not a real business, which my dad and I talked about the other night, and I was like, through talking through it, I was like, well, that's bullshit, because there are lots of businesses out there that aren't solely focused on that aspect. And also, to your point, my dad said, listen, you've got a great job that you love right now, and that is paying the bills and helping to pay off that student loan debt, which is still massive. It's about $65,000. Mm-hmm. And he said, and this job offers you the financial security and the freedom to build this business while you're still working. And so for me, I'm with you. I'm on that same school of thought that, I love and support the people that take the leap and that works for them. I believe for me that the message that I want to share is a more pragmatic, calculated, decisive way to work through it, because I promised my parents when I graduated that I would deal with my student loan debt, that I would not let that fall to them, and that would be my responsibility. So to your point, it's like, how do I build this business? And using the Joe Polish methodology of making an ELF business, which is easy, lucrative, and fun, how do I create this business, make it as simple and fun to create, and then at that point that I say I'm ready to make a transition, it's not this, oh my God, what's going to happen? It's a smooth, seamless transition into this business that you've created and made sustainable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When I was full-time in my job and starting to build this business, and the first business I built was one that was very resource intensive and it required startup capital. So I was the pitch man. So I did, 60 or more investor pitches, and I was taking my lunch break, or I was, working overtime to be able to leave early on an afternoon to go do investor pitches while I was still at my full-time job. We had no way to make any money until we actually had investors that started writing checks. And so the way something I like to tell everybody that I work with who is in a corporate job, and whether they want to switch to another corporate job, another industry, another company, or they want to become an entrepreneur, it is so important, kind of going back to our way of being even more important than what we're doing. It's very important to me, at least, and I've seen this in myself and so many of my clients, that we at least fall in like with the job that we have now.
Fall in like, okay.
Yeah. You don't have to be in love with it, but at least fall in like, because there are so many gifts in any job you could possibly have. There are parallels in the skills that you're learning, developing, and using on a daily basis that can be used in entrepreneurship. There is the fact that your job is the financier of your dream. Mm-hmm. Like, how many people can say that they are being paid to have some way to, on the side or at night or on the weekends, work on something that eventually is going to be the thing they want to do? Like, there's so many gifts in what we have in our jobs, and if we can really open ourselves up to see those gifts and to see how that job is actually empowering us to do what we want to do next, and it's not some big iron fist that's pushing down on us and trying to shove us into the ground, and we can recognize that we have a choice about the way we show up, it can actually make the job so much easier to deal with. Because the other thing about that is that a lot of people think that you can be in a job all day and be miserable, and then somehow at 5 o'clock you can switch it over and be this empowered, creative, amazing entrepreneur. And the fact of the matter is, if you're practicing being miserable all day, it's going to be really difficult to shift that just because the time has changed over.
Right.
It's very important to recognize that, the analogy I like to use is that it's like having a peanut allergy. If I have a peanut allergy in North Carolina, I'm also going to have a peanut allergy in Hong Kong. So just because I leave one job that's miserable and I think that going to another job or starting a company is going to make it all better, it's not going to unless I change something on the inside. And that's actually what happened with me when I left my corporate job and started this company, is that I thought everything was going to be better, and certain aspects were, because there's always something to be said for you doing something that you actually are naturally excited or enjoy doing. But if I didn't change anything on the inside and I was still looking for someone to blame, which had gone away a lot but would still creep in once in a while, then the same thing ends up happening again. You end up feeling those same feelings of frustration and overwhelm and stress because you haven't done anything on the inside to change the way you're showing up.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's such an interesting concept, because I remember believing, if I was in a different job or if I was traveling, right? If I was in a different country, then I'd be happy. And I've been very fortunate in this job that I have gotten to travel a lot, and I've been fortunate in my life to have traveled a lot. And you think that you're going to somehow leave behind U.S. Brian, and then you're going to meet Spain Brian, and Spain Brian's happy. Spain Brian just loves to dance, and he smiles all the time, and he's dating a hot Spanish girl, so Spain Brian's going to be so much fun. Now, I will say, I think travel is one of the most important things in the world, but don't assume that travel is suddenly going to make you forget or let go, or, it's just like we talked about before, it could be used as another mask. Travel is phenomenal, and these amazing experiences can help you distance yourself from some doubt or some fear, or they can really help you step into who you really are, because you put yourself out of your general circumstance and you create what you really want to be in. But especially if you're going back to a job, like Jason said, that you hate, and at least 40 hours of the week you've decided that you're going to be in a mode of hating and sadness and anger, then even when you're on vacation, you're going to be like, oh, God, when I get back, there's going to be so many emails, and oh my God, because I've been there, I've done that. So the real truth and the real way that I've come to enjoy traveling the most is by doing the work, the hard work, looking inside and committing to these things that I've been putting off or that I've been afraid to commit to. So I think that's so critical, Jason. I love the stuff you're sharing, man. So, all right. So the first entrepreneurial endeavor was the executive car service. How did that transition into Meometry? And could you please explain to the listeners what Meometry is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So that first business ended up closing about 18 months later. And just another real quick entrepreneurial lesson here, another side of the non-glamorous but real side of entrepreneurship is that, having that money saved up from my corporate job to go and start this new venture, which, I put a lot of my own money into as well and time, and then of course not taking a salary. So that money gets burned up pretty quick. But one of the things that I did as well is not just have my burn rate of how much money I needed per month to live, but I also set a fume date. And a fume date is basically when you're going to be living on fumes, right? Running on fumes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so I had, maybe a year of savings in the bank, but it doesn't mean that I go for a year and then reevaluate, because now it's too late. Now I'm going to get into a high pressure situation.
Right.
So what I did was I set a fume date of about 9 months into the venture and said at the 9-month mark, we're going to reassess. Mm-hmm. And if this doesn't look like it's going in the right direction, then I'm going to have to figure out another way to do things, to pivot, to do something different. And so the 9-month mark came around, and we had raised, pretty much, we raised 6 figures of funding for the company, but we needed more. Mm-hmm. And so since it didn't look like we were going to be able to raise that, I decided that it would be best for me to move on. Now my partners decided to keep the business and ended up closing it about 6 months later. But I had that fume date set, so I was being realistic. I was taking personal responsibility. And when that date hit and I needed to repad my savings account, I went back to work. I went to find an IT job again, and I went back to work for 6 months and padded my savings account and then left again to start my next company. So, there's nothing wrong with getting a bridge job. There's nothing there's no failure in this. I think people, again, have a lot of times have this all or nothing mentality where if it doesn't all work, then none of it works. And there's so much beautiful gray area that gets left out there, so much creative space that gets left out if we have that kind of approach or that kind of outlook. So for me, getting a bridge job and going back into a corporate situation for a company that was actually a lot worse on the surface than the company I worked for before was something that probably doesn't look glamorous from the outside, but again, I looked at it as yet another financier, yet another opportunity that I had to reset with my new lessons learned from the last company and start again. And that's exactly what I did. And so...
And Jason, I was going to say, just to add, that I love that piece, because I didn't even know this piece, that you had to get an interim job as you continued to build the next thing. And so I think in terms of entrepreneurial endeavors, people tend to look at it as all or nothing. Like, either I'm going to fail miserably or succeed wonderfully, and if I fail miserably, then I'm stuck in a 9-to-5 that I hate for the rest of my life. It's like, then it's like I tried, I had my one life in the video game, and now it's game over. Whereas, like you said, like anything else, this is just, okay, this step didn't work. All right, let's find a way to create some revenue, so I take that pressure off myself. And Lisa Nichols says the same thing you said. She said, I stopped looking at my job as this terrible thing that I hated that I had to do for 40, 50 hours a week, to the first investor in my company. So I thought that was, I love that you say that too, because that perspective shift for me was massive at my first job, because that first job was harder for me. It was more transactional, and I just really didn't feel the connection. I was able to create it, but it took the mindset shifts. So
absolutely.
So now you have that bridge job, and then can you tell us about the transition to Meometry?
Yeah, and there was another company in between that's actually still up and running. But
really, which one?
So there's a company called Gentora Group that I launched with another group of guys, and that's still up and running. And that's a much longer story that maybe we'll save for another interview. But it's a really cool story because it's actually something that we did in partnership with NASA. So we actually have 3 of the patents from the space shuttle program exclusively to commercialize to the private sector and the Department of Defense. So we're working on that, and it's a very, very cool project. And I got to work directly with the scientists and the inventors at NASA, and got to go behind the scenes and play with shuttle orbiter windows and see rovers that haven't even been launched into space yet. And so that was a cool experience too, and that one's still going. But even with that, and I was the CEO of both of the companies that I started. I didn't come on as CEO for the first one. That was something that one of the investors said they would only invest if I was put into that role, which was a big vote of confidence, which I appreciated. And then the second one was something where it kind of naturally happened as a part of the formation of the company. So there were 2 great companies, great experiences. The second one is still running. I've stepped back day to day so that I can focus on Meometry and left it in very capable hands. But that was what I realized while I was doing that company, that there was still something more that I wanted to do. And so really that's where coaching came up for me and where Meometry was born. So Meometry, again, it's one of those things where the name, I don't know that it really is as big of a deal anymore. It was something with my marketing background that I thought I needed to have a catchy name. And I still love what it stands for. Meometry essentially means it's the measurement of me, and it's about me finding my own measurement of success, my own way to measure my own fulfillment, my own happiness, my own joy. And so there are as many Meometries as there are people. Because everybody has their own measure of success, and I really want people to find that for themselves without it being dictated or bestowed upon them by somebody else. But essentially, why that was born was that I loved personal development. I loved some kind of performance element. I loved helping people change their lives. And I said, hell, is there a way that I can do all those things and get paid for it? Holy shit, there is. So that was really how it was born. And so, ever since then, I started the company a little over 2 years ago. And I've been coaching entrepreneurs and leaders and groups and doing talks and group programs and things like that, all in some way, shape, or form, hoping to really help people, to have them change their lives. And what I like to say is that my why, going back to like Simon Sinek and start with why, my why is to live an inspired life that inspires others to inspire others. And that is my ripple effect of inception of inspiration that I'm looking to do in my life.
I was inspired. Oh my God. It's just inspiration everywhere.
It is. And to have fun in the process. You know this about me, man. I think that people, a lot of times, myself included in the past and even now, sometimes just take things too seriously. And this is not about putting on rose-colored glasses and looking for rainbows and butterflies, but it's really that if we come from a place where things are not that serious, we open ourselves up to a level of consciousness and a quality of thinking where we can create so much more than if we do it from this place of heavy pressure, stress, and seriousness.
Mm-hmm. And I loved what you had said to me when we were talking about how we create that circumstance. That's another story that we're telling ourselves, that work, in order to be working hard and producing and really doing well at your job, you need to feel stressed and be have your head down and work till 3 a.m. And when you said, you're Brian, that's just another story that we're writing. That's just another thing we're creating in our mind. And I love the phrase that you applied to your attitude about being playful. So could you please share with the listeners what that is and why you choose to live your life in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to say that I'm seriously playful, and what that really means, if you break that down, is that when I say I'm going to do something, when I decide that I'm going to commit to something, I'm all in, and of course all in, like we talked about earlier, is a moment by moment decision. It's not all in and then it just automatically happens. It's something that I have to choose on a moment by moment, day to day basis. But so I'm being serious with the fact that I'm committed to what I'm doing, and I'm going to give my all of my creative energy, all of my love, all of my attention, all of my focus. And at the same time, remember that it's not that serious. It doesn't have to be such a big, heavy, stressful thing. I can be playful while I'm being committed. And if you look at, the perfect example of that to me are, teenage boys and girls too, I guess nowadays, but typically the avatar of teenage boys at 3:30 on a Friday afternoon when they're out of school, they are seriously, playfully committed to playing video games for the next 48 hours straight. And there is no stress, and there's no heaviness, and there's no anxiety. They cannot wait to get home, get on that console, and seriously play their asses off for the next 48 hours. And we have the power to choose that exact same thing in anything that we want to do or create in the world.
I love the analogy, and it makes me think back to being a kid, playing with action figures and just playing outside, using your imagination, playing in the woods. There wasn't a timeline, there wasn't a deadline, there wasn't a fun quotient to hit for the day. It was, there weren't metrics and scorecards. It was just, I feel like as children, we're so much more guided by our intuition, and then that can get beat out of us as we grow. And then we have these situations where we get into personal development where we're just trying to reconnect with that childlike knowing that we have of what's really, because you will talk to people. I talk to people all the time. I ask them the questions and they're like, well, I don't know what makes me happy. And it's of course we do. It's inside us, and we may have hidden it, we may have pushed it away, and it may have been a while since we felt it, but it's there. Sometimes we're just afraid to admit what truly makes us happy, whether we're afraid of judgment or criticism or whatever it may be. So Jason, what I'm thinking would be the best thing to do, because I know we've got a hard cutoff, and there's a lot more I want to dig into your story. I want to hear more about, how do you spell Jentura Group?
Juntura. It's Spanish to mean to connect. And so juntura would be, I guess, the Spanish way to say it.
Yeah.
And it's because we talked about connecting innovation to industry, connecting these inventions to real life products in the world.
See, I speak Spanish fluently. I've never heard that word. So
really,
you just taught me a new Spanish word. That's I was like, really, that's Spanish? So okay.
Jew taught you a new Spanish word. I love it.
But, like I said, guys, Jason will be joking the entire show. So what I think would be the best thing to do, because I've done this in the past where I tried to, all right, we have a deadline and we have to squeeze in. I don't want to do that because I love your story, and I think there's so much more to share in terms of Evercoach, in terms of the Jentura Group and that genesis. So I think the best thing to do would be to put this one on pause, and we'll do a two-parter, and we'll reschedule to hit up the second part, and this will be my first ever two-part interview.
Done. I'm happy to pop your cherry on a two-parter.
Awesome. Well, I am too. I'm excited for it. So now I do want to share with the listeners, though, something special that you have offered them, and I am extremely grateful for you doing this because I know the listeners are going to get a lot of value out of this. So could you share the special offer that you're making to the listeners of my show?
Absolutely, yeah. So what I want to do for you guys, because I want to support your growth and help Brian in supporting your growth, because I just love the work that he's doing and how he's wanting to support all of you. And something I've done a lot with entrepreneurs is work with them on helping them to share their message, even when it's really scary to do so, to put yourself out there. So there is a video course that I did for an online academy called the Academy for Optimal Living. And the name of the course is How to Share Your Message Even If You're Terrified. And so it's something that has been really, really transformational for a lot of entrepreneurs. At least they've told me it has been, and I've seen them firsthand do this. And so what I want to do is I just want to gift that to you guys. I don't need anything in return. I'll give you a link to go to my website to download it. You don't have to put in your email address to get it. If you'd like to sign up for my newsletter, you can. But there are no strings attached. This is just something that I hope will benefit you. And I would love to hear any of your takeaways or insights, or even things that are maybe confusing and not clear for you when you watch the video course, if you'd like to share that with me. So please feel free to enjoy the course, to get something great out of it, and to let me know what happens as a result.
So for all the listeners, this is a master coach giving you one of his programs, totally free, no strings attached, for you to grow and for you to develop. For those of you that are in personal development, you know how valuable these courses can be and how expensive they can be. So dive on in. For those of you who are afraid, have never tried, and maybe personal development is something new to you, this would be a fantastic way for you to dive in, to start introducing yourself to your potential. And I like to say reintroducing yourself to your potential, because it's always been there. Sometimes it's just like a friend or an acquaintance that we've lost touch with. So and Jason, to close out, so one, again, dude, thank you so much, because that is massive. And for all the listeners, I will be putting the link on my page. In the second interview, we'll share the actual link in the URL. And so you'll have content to that, as well as all of the show notes will be put up on the Overcoming Graduation blog. But Jason, I always close out these interviews with one question, and we've definitely got time for this one because it's one of my favorite ones to ask. So
cool.
If you could go back, and I think for you I might modify the question slightly, but if you could go back to talk to yourself at that college graduation phase when you were just about to step out into the real world, but I think for you an even more impactful question might be, if you could go back to when you were at your lowest low, when you were at that point where everything seemed to just be spiraling out of control, what advice would your current self give your past self right now?
You know, it's a great question, Brian. It really is, and there, you know, initially there are a lot of things that are flying through my head that I would say, and at the same time, I kind of feel like I wouldn't say anything to myself, because there's something about me going through whatever I went through that allows me to be where I am today, and more importantly, to be able to serve the people that I serve. And so if there's any chance that me changing any of the way things have unfolded up to this point would mean that I'd be in a different place where I wouldn't be able to serve people in the same way, I don't know that it'd be worth it to shorten that learning curve or to take away those challenges or that growth. So if anything, maybe I would go back to that older version or that younger version of myself and just tell myself to be patient, just to wait. It's going to get really, really good if you just let it unfold the way it's supposed to.
Awesome. I love that, man. So thank you so much for being on the show today, and I'm really excited to dig in on part 2. This is really exciting for me because I love to hear these stories. Many of these stories I haven't heard yet, so it's exciting for me to get to do this 2-part and continue to share your story. So first off, thank you so much for being on the show and for making that incredible offer to my audience.
Oh, my pleasure, man. And I'm looking forward to connecting with you again and to connecting with everybody here. You know, if anybody wants to connect with me directly, I love hanging out on Facebook. That's kind of my spot that I like to engage with people. And to make it really easy to find me, just go to www.facebookjason.com and it will redirect you direct to my Facebook page and add me and we'll connect.
What are you, from the 1990s, WWW? Like,
Well, you know, if I don't do that, then
HTTP colon.
people think, open up your Netscape browser.
Okay.
And go to Ask Jeeves.
Okay,
and
yeah.
Google Jason Goldberg. Yeah, it'll be great. Yeah, I love the 90s. What's wrong with the 90s, dude? Just because you're mid-20s doesn't mean you can crap on the 90s.
I grew up in the 90s. I'm an 89 baby, but I grew up in... All right, open your Netscape browser. I love that.
Oh, it's awesome, man. Love it.
So, okay, so for all the listeners, Jason and I could just shoot the shit for hours. So for all the listeners, everything from the first part of this first ever 2-part series will be up on overcominggraduation.com. So head over there to sign up for the mailing list, as well as see a full list of every episode ever recorded and some other videos, offers, giveaways, the whole shebang. You can also check out Overcoming Graduation and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Stitcher. And you can check out, again, Overcoming Graduation on the Facebook page, the Instagram, or the Twitter page as well. So for today, we'll be closing out. Thank you all so much for listening. And Jason, one more time, man, thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure, brother. Connect again soon.
All right. Love you, buddy. Talk soon.
Love you, bro. All right.
Bye.